Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The Premier of Nova Scotia is asking for more military personnel to help with cleanup efforts following the devastation left behind by post-tropical storm Fiona. Alberta Health Minister Jason Copping explains why it was so important for the province to sign a new agreement with doctors. And Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf discusses how many more family physicians we can expect to arrive here in the Windy City.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Communities along Florida's southwestern coast have begun assessing the damage from Tropical Storm Ian as coastal floodwaters begin to fade. In one hard-hit county, utility service have been completely wiped out, forcing the sheriff's office to use cell phones to handle emergency calls and limiting the capabilities of dispatchers. Winds hit more than 112 kilometers an hour. Some areas saw up to 30 centimeters of rain, and power was knocked out to 2.5 million residents. Meanwhile, here in our county, Defense Minister Anita Anand provided an update on the federal response to Hurricane Fiona in Atlantic Canada. The storm, which made landfall in eastern Nova Scotia on the morning of September 24th, brought damaging winds, flooding, and power outages to so many regions of eastern Canada.
In the last 24 hours, our Canadian Armed Forces helped Nova Scotia Power with constructing a staging area at Mayflower Mall in Sydney, and they have been assisting with general duties at the staging area since then. This work will continue today. Damage assessments are being conducted in Sydney, Pictou, and New Glasgow to determine effective supports moving forward. Joint Task Force Atlantic, bolstered by members of 36 Canadian Brigade Group Domestic Response Company, established a headquarters in Truro, which has now moved to Pictou to coordinate the disaster response. This response center is the central hub for all relief operations in the province and on Prince Edward Island.
Meanwhile, in Halifax, Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston spoke about the recovery efforts in the wake of Hurricane Fiona. Houston is calling on the federal government to deploy even more military aid to assist in the recovery. There are around 300 military personnel currently in Nova Scotia.
Fiona has left a mark on our province that will not soon be forgotten. I've spent most of this week traveling around the province, assessing the damage, speaking to impacted Nova Scotians, business owners, and working on the best ways we can as a province help each other. Cleanup in the aftermath of Fiona continues, but there is still extensive damage all through Colchester, Pictou, Antigonish, Guysborough counties, and of course certain areas of Cape Breton. EMO is working with partners to remove trees and restore power as quickly as possible, but the damage is truly extensive. We've asked the federal government for more military help here. I understand we have just over 300 military personnel on the ground, and I am thankful to the federal government for that, but we need so much more.
Meanwhile, here in southwestern Alberta, we saw lots of cloud cover and even some spotty showers in some regions. Jeanette Rocher is now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, how long will some of the moisture be sticking around?
Well, Hal, both tonight and tomorrow we're looking at a 60% chance of showers, but after that it's mainly sunny skies in the forecast. Overnight low this evening we're looking at 11 degrees, still much higher than average. Also a northwest wind at 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. Those same gusty winds into tomorrow, Friday, along with a 22-degree high and that 60% chance of showers. I'll have that 7-day forecast coming up for you later on in the show.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Alberta's doctors have ratified a new agreement with the province. Physicians voted 70% in favor of a new 4-year, $252 million deal. The agreement will give doctors a lump sum payment this fiscal year to acknowledge physicians' hard work during the past couple of years. Health Minister Jason Copping says the new deal was vital in addressing many health concerns that Albertans had, and that includes the need to attract more doctors to rural Alberta.
Now, two of our most urgent issues are the need for more access to primary care and the need to recruit and retain more rural physicians. AHS has had success in recruiting to many communities like Medicine Hat, Lethbridge, and Lloydminster recently. But the past 3 years have been tough, especially in smaller communities, and recruitment of rural physicians is harder than ever. We need more doctors in the smaller communities across the province, and the agreement will be a boost to our recruitment and our ability to be able to succeed in this area. We train the best doctors in the world, including the best rural doctors. And we're one of the, we are the most welcoming province in Canada for internationally trained doctors who are critical to many of our small communities. And this agreement will help us support them.
Now, when it comes to family physicians moving to our city, Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf echoed the comments by Minister Copping, saying more doctors are on their way.
We have 17 new doctors hired, and if you consider that each doctor roughly has a patient list of an average of 1,000 people, that's almost half of the people in Lethbridge who don't have a family doctor can now look forward to hopefully attaining one. And if some of those doctors take on a few more patients, we can maybe hit that halfway mark. We've got 4 that are in the process who should be able to practice in Lethbridge before the end of the year. And the rest of them are slated to begin work between January and the end of March next year.
Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf will also explain why he's putting his support behind UCP leadership hopeful Daniel Smith. He'll have all the details coming up in the second half of our show. A Lethbridge cardiologist received a very special award on Tuesday. Dr. Saye Zilke was recently awarded a Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee Medal in Edmonton for her contributions in the province. Dr. Zilke currently serves as the medical director of Chinook Cardiology and the Cardiac Rehabilitation Program. She was born in Iran and immigrated to Canada as a teenager. She completed her medical doctorate from the University of Ottawa, but now calls Lethbridge home. September is Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder Awareness Month. Now, thousands of Albertans are affected by FASD, and support is available. Now, to discuss this in more detail is the program manager for Lethbridge Family Services, Lynette Tall, and she joins us now here in Lethbridge. Lynette, first of all, what is FASD exactly?
It's a lifelong disability that affects the brain, actually, as well as the body of people who have been exposed to alcohol in the womb.
So what help or support is readily available to those who are affected by FASD?
We have what is called the FASD network. That network funds about 4 or 5 different organizations within Lethbridge and actually surrounding area. Lethbridge Family Services has the FASD assessment and diagnostic services that provides assessment and diagnosis to children and adults, so ages 9 to however old. Then there is McMahon. McMahon provides different programs, but their program is called FASD Lifespan, and they provide life coaches to individuals suspected with FASD as well as diagnosed, and they provide support to caregivers, so people that are caring for individuals diagnosed with FASD.
Thanks so much, Lynette. For more information about the wide range of programs and services available to help those impacted by FASD, it can be found on the Lethbridge Family Services website. As part of Truth and Reconciliation Week, the 60 Scoop Indigenous Society of Alberta has brought a booth to Lethbridge College. It's giving people an opportunity to learn more about what the 60 Scoop really was. The president of the society, Sandra Relling, says it's important to educate people on what it was, as it often gets overlooked.
Everybody has a wonderful awareness of residential schools, as they should, and that part of history in this country. However, the 60 Scoop really seems to be overshadowed by a lot of those different events, and we want people to know that those policies of assimilation never stopped when residential schools closed, that the 60 Scoop is truly a continuation of those assimilation policies.
Relling says the engagement from people stopping by the exhibit has been great so far, and they hope people will walk away with a better understanding of residential schools and what transpired with the 60 Scoop. If you happen to drive down Great Bear Boulevard on the west side, you might notice a few Blackfoot art pieces. 3 Indigenous artists completed several pieces, including a big mural outside of Fire Station Number 5 that reflects Blackfoot culture and territory in our city. Haley Heavyshield, the artist behind the mural, says it's truly an honor to have created a piece for the city and explains the meaning behind her work.
As an intergenerational residential school survivor, I've I'm really trying to learn my language, and I think incorporating it in my art is really important. The mural behind me is reminiscent of a teepee design, and so I wanted to really show or make reference to home of the fire hall number 5. The symbolism on top is in reference to stars, and the cross too as well is a butterfly that's put on the back of a teepee.
This is the first time that 3 artists have collaborated on pieces, and the hope is to have more Indigenous artwork displayed around the city. Staff from the Lethbridge School Division's Education Centre held a circle exercise today as part of National Day for Truth and Reconciliation Week. The exercise represented an Indigenous child being taken from their home and put into a residential school. Melanie Morrow with the School Division says this type of activity is important in order to have a better understanding of what truly transpired during that time.
I think that it impacts people differently. I think that doing an activity like this really, as I said, it hits different. It puts you in a different mindset, and having gone through an activity like this really puts the shoe on the other foot. So I think for a lot of people who don't have the awareness of really what happened, going through an activity like this is really meaningful and really impactful.
Similar exercises were held at other schools across the city. 16 firefighters from 3 stations were called out to a house fire on Eagle Road North in Lethbridge around 11 p.m. on Wednesday night. When they arrived, flames were shooting out from the basement. The blaze was quickly brought under control. Fire officials say 1 resident suffered minor injuries, and crews were able to save a couple of family pets. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. Damage estimates have not yet been determined. Lethbridge Police have asked City Council to be able to add 15 new officer positions. The LPS says the extra bodies are needed to help meet the growing demand and needs in our city. The Standing Policy Committee has been asked to approve a budget increase of $1.1 million a year over the next 4 years. If the funding is approved, it'll pay for 15 new police officers along with around 15 civilian staff to help with administrative work. The LPS wants to hire 2 new officers next year, 7 in the year 2024, and 6 more by the year 2025. A lot of Canadians are concerned about their safety, especially when it comes to protecting their families and properties in rural areas. Cord DeWitt is with Alberta Rural Crime Watch and Rural Crime Prevention. He says a number of Albertans on farms and acreages are still concerned with the amount of time it takes for police to arrive after they call 911.
The biggest thing that they're looking at right now is a timeline between Rcmp getting out to the rural area where the incident has taken place, and the rates. The rate of crime increases in some communities, and it's kind of funny when you look at it this way. You see an increase in break and enters from 5 to 10 a month, and suddenly there's a 50% increase, and it's not really a 50% increase. It's just a little bit of a rush on break and enters, and the next month it'll go down, and they say, okay, it's a decrease. We've done our job. Well, we haven't really done our job. It's just gone down naturally.
Mr. DeWitt will have more on crime rates in rural Alberta and how the RCMP is tackling those issues. That's coming up later in our broadcast. Applied agri-food research is an important topic that has continued to remain underfunded. That's according to Executive Director Ken Coles, who works for Farming Smarter here in Lethbridge. Coles presented at SACPA earlier today. He says that Canada's Agricultural Climate Solutions Program is encouraging farmers to reduce their nitrogen fertilizer use by 30% by the year 2030. He says most farmers are not in favor.
So this is a controversial policy, and it isn't actually a policy at this point. It's meant to be a voluntary objective from what's being communicated. However, it's not been, I think, accepted by the ag community as such. They see it as a risk to future regulations where they're being told how much fertilizer they can use. So I think that's what's brought out a lot of the debate.
Cole says between 2005 and 2019, fertilizer application increased by 71% across Canada, primarily driven by more fertilizer use here in Western Canada. Over the same time frame, emissions from fertilizer use in Canada increased by 54%. The sport of powerlifting continues to gain traction and momentum. A local powerlifter is a defending world champion and is set to go back to England to challenge again for the title later this year. BCN's Micah Quinn has more on the 72-year-old powerlifter and what motivates him to keep going.
Michael Marcinkowski is originally from Poland and moved to Canada in 1982. He began powerlifting professionally in 1998, and he's currently the defending world champion powerlifter in his division after he won the World Drug-Free Powerlifting Federation Championships in 2019. He will be making his way to England to defend his title at the age of 72 years old for the 2022 finals.
Which maybe got power, this prevent me from injuries. I be capable to do that.
Marcinkowski will try to beat the world record in the deadlift category, which comes in at just under 400 pounds.
So I have to lift basically 4 plates, this big one, 45 pounds. It'll be 9 pounds more than world record. So hopefully my back, to hold that thing before I, only thing, deadlift is last one, so I have 3 attempts opening. So I'm going to open, with very light, my minimum, what they require. And after I have 2 another lefts, regular, and after I can ask for 4 attempts if it's for world records.
To add to his list of accomplishments, Marcinkowski was also inducted into the Lethbridge Sports Hall of Fame in 2007. He will board a plane on November 10th as he heads to England to defend his title. And once he steps off, he'll have a few days to get ready before he competes in the deadlift competition. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
72 years old. That's incredible. A global prayer event is coming up November the 6th, 5 p.m. Mountain Time, with Christians around the world praying for believers who are being persecuted for their faith. This year's theme is called Not Abandoned. Open Doors, along with other partners, will be hosting an online prayer event connecting Canadians from coast to coast to coast. Reverend Gary Stagg, Executive Director with Open Doors Canada, joins us now from Halton Hills, Ontario, to talk about it. Reverend Gary, how will this work?
If you're following Open Doors or any of the other ministries that are focused on the persecuted church, you can follow them through their YouTube programs or YouTube channels or Facebook Live channels. And we're going to connect everybody in a great prayer meeting. And it's a great opportunity to collaborate with ministries that focus on persecuted Christians worldwide.
Open Doors founder Brother Andrew passed away recently at the age of 94. What did he mean for your organization and how he put his life on the line for serving so many other people?
He's such a hero of the faith, and he started this ministry 67 years ago in 1955 when God called him to take Bibles to Christians behind the Iron Curtain. And from there, the ministry has grown to work in more than 60 countries around the world, wherever Christians are persecuted. He just was a person of just sheer faith that was courageous enough to just go through any door that was open and doors that weren't even open, that if God called him to go and to deliver Bibles or to bring encouragement to believers, whether it was behind the Iron Curtain or in Pakistan or in Africa somewhere, he just went.
Thanks so much, Reverend Gary. That was Gary Stagg, Executive Director of Open Doors Canada, joining us from Halton Hills, Ontario. Well, we had lots of cloud cover and even some light showers in parts of southwestern Alberta today. How much moisture can we expect to receive? A complete look at the weather picture is coming up. After breaking a heat record on Wednesday, the temperature in Lethbridge was considerably cooler today. Jeanette Rocher is now with a full look at the weather picture. Jeanette, it may be a little bit cooler, but still fairly warm for this time of year.
So true. And today the expected high was 27 degrees. We didn't quite reach that, but we still got up in there in the 20s. So yes, you are right. Well above average for this time of year. Looking at a 60% chance of showers this evening with an overnight low of 11 degrees. For tomorrow, Friday, 22 degrees the high, 60% chance of showers into Saturday. We're looking at a high of 22 as well, with mainly sunny skies, sunshine sticking around into Sunday with a high of 21, up to 24 degrees for Monday under sunny skies, 24 also on Tuesday, and a high of 19 degrees on Wednesday. So look at that. We got 20s all the way through all the way up to almost the mid-20s there, with the coldest day being 19 degrees. I'll definitely take it. Average high for this time of year, 18, so we're going to stick above that for a while. 3 degrees is our average low, 32, that was our high temperature on this day. Back in 1963. -8 was the lowest temperature on record for this day. It happened in 1985. 7:28, that's when the sun rose this morning. Our sunset this evening at 7:15, giving us 11 hours and 47 minutes of daylight. We're actually 4 minutes less than we were yesterday. 20 degrees the high tomorrow in Victoria under mainly sunny skies. Going to feel a little chillier near the Juan de Fuca Strait. 19 the high in Vancouver, feeling much warmer inland though. Sunny skies there. Edmonton looking at a chance of showers earlier in the day and then clearing up in the afternoon. 21 the high there. 20 degrees the high for Calgary, also looking at a chance of showers in the morning. 24 the high tomorrow in Saskatoon under partly cloudy skies. Regina sitting at 23 tomorrow, and a high of 22 is expected tomorrow in Winnipeg. And most of these prairie cities also seeing wind gusts of 20 to 40 kilometers per hour as well. In the central part of the country, mainly sunny skies all over the place. Toronto sitting at 17 for the high, 19 the high in Ottawa, and 17 will be the expected high tomorrow in Montreal as well. As we look to Atlantic Canada, still reeling from the devastation of Fiona, but Fredericton sitting at 18 degrees tomorrow under sunny skies. Clear skies as well in Halifax tomorrow with a high of 19, 16 in Charlottetown, and a high of 15 in St. John's, Newfoundland, with a chance of drizzle there. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Many drivers across Canada are paying more at the gas pumps today, even though the average national increase was just over 3 cents. CAA's gas price tracker says the price of gas nationally is $1.58 a litre, with some provinces seeing higher jumps at the pumps than others. Alberta saw an average increase of 6.5 cents a litre, while in Saskatchewan, it's up almost 6 cents. Gas prices in southern Ontario went up by an average of just 2 cents, but in the northern part of the province, including Thunder Bay, it skyrocketed by almost 20 cents a litre. Stats Canada says the Canadian economy unexpectedly grew by 0.1% in July. The federal agency had forecasted a contraction of 0.1%. It says a decline in the services-producing industries was offset by growth in goods-producing industries. Economists say a contraction in the retail sector, along with food and accommodation services, may mean high inflation and interest rates are affecting consumers more broadly. They say the Bank of Canada is likely to move forward with another interest rate hike next month, but then it should take a pause due to signs of weakening consumer spending. Cineplex says it is not giving up the fight to get damages from Cineworld after the British-based company walked away from a $2.2 billion deal to buy the Canadian movie chain. That's even though an American court denied Cineplex's request to allow a Canadian case between the two companies to proceed. Cineworld filed for bankruptcy in the U.S. earlier this month. Cineplex says Cineworld took the position that the Canadian case was contingent on proceedings before the U.S. Bankruptcy Court for the Southern District of Texas. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 207 points on the day to finish at 18,441. The Dow was down 458 points to 29,225. The Rcmp 500 was down 78 points to 3640. And the Nasdaq was down 314 on the day to 10,737. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 50 cents to 81.65 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 7 cents to 6.89 US. Gold was up 6 cents to 16.6061 US an ounce, and silver was down a cent to 18.81 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.97 per bushel. Barley's at $9.36. Canola's at $19.39, and corn is at $12.24 per bushel. Live cattle were up $1.08 to $144.13. Feeder cattle were up $2.33 to $177.33, and lean hogs were up 8 cents to $89.45. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 73.09 US. Recapping one of our top stories, Defense Minister Anita Anand says there are now 700 members of the military helping with storm cleanup in Atlantic Canada. She says Canadian Armed Forces personnel are helping to clear debris, reopen roads, and assess the damage in Nova Scotia, PEI, and southwestern Newfoundland. She says additional troops are on standby, along with some ships and aircraft to help out further. Coming up, an exclusive one-on-one interview with UCP Caucus Chair and Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf, who explains why he's putting his full support behind UCP leadership hopeful Daniel Smith. Mr. Neudorf will also have an update as to how many new physicians are coming to Lethbridge. Listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you. The UCP will be choosing its new leader on October the 6th. Now, according to recent polls, Daniel Smith is the frontrunner, followed closely by Travis Taves. Brian Jean is running a distant third so far in the contest. Now, a politician who put his support behind former Wildrose Party leader Daniel Smith is UCP Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf, and he joins us now from Lethbridge. Nathan, welcome back to BCN.
Thanks, Hal. Great pleasure to be here.
Now, Nathan, critics of Daniel Smith say she cannot be trusted, citing when she crossed the floor a number of years ago, taking a number of MLAs with her, from the Wildrose to Jim Prentice and the PCs. In an exclusive interview with Bridge City News, she said she admitted that it was wrong. So how can Albertans really put their faith and support and trust in her like you have, leading up to the leadership race here?
Well, Hal, I believe that the lesson of humility is actually a great one to learn. And that she's learned the cost of making that mistake. She's paid for that personally, and we as a conservative movement have paid for that in losing power back in 2015. So I look forward to working with her with that level of humility, with that understanding that mistakes like that actually cost something to us personally and to us corporately. So I look forward to building that team with her and building unity back in the conservative movement so that we present a great option for all Albertans in the next election.
Now, you were one of the first MLAs to really throw your support behind Daniel Smith. What is it about her leadership qualities that you really appreciate?
Well, some of it's just my core beliefs in the founding principles of the United Conservative Party, limited government and serving the people, a very grassroots kind of movement. That's who I've always tried to be. I listen to all the constituents of Lethbridge East and Lethbridge West and try to represent them no matter who they voted for, and take their concerns to government and advocate and represent them well. Those are the ideals, the foundational principles I believe in, and think that Danielle also believes in, and I look forward to the potential of working with her to develop that throughout our entire team.
Now, Rachel Notley and the NDP have been kind of acting like a government in waiting right now, Nathan. What will it really take to ensure that your party holds on to power as we head into next spring's provincial election?
You know what? I think it'll take more of that humility. It'll take good governance, making sure that we meet the stakeholders' needs between now and then, continue to do that. It'll take unity, and it'll take a lot of hard work. We have had turmoil. We've had a pandemic. We've had an economic collapse. We've had a number of difficult situations over the past 3.5 years. Some of those are provincial, some of those are national, and some of those are international. We need to show the people of Alberta that we hear their concerns, we're governing them well, and we can work together in a free and democratic society to continue to do that on their behalf.
Now, you currently sit as UCP Caucus Chair. You also sit on a number of committees. Is there a certain portfolio that you kind of like? I mean, it'd be nice to have another minister here in Lethbridge once again.
It would be great. I've always advocated that Lethbridge, as Alberta's third largest city, deserves to have a cabinet posting. We'll see what happens going forward. It's been an honor and a privilege serving the citizens of Lethbridge and area and advocating on their behalf. And I look forward to serving them in whatever capacity comes down the road in the next few weeks or months. But right now, we'll just take it one day at a time.
I'm just wondering, is there a portfolio that kind of interests you? Like maybe
there's
jobs
a number
minister?
There's a number that interests me that I think some of my background could play into, but I don't want to get ahead of myself or ahead of things. Let's just see what the people of the United Conservative Party vote on October 6th, and we'll have some of those conversations after that.
Nathan, Alberta doctors have ratified a new proposed agreement with the provincial government. Do you think this will really help attract more family physicians to Lethbridge and southwestern Alberta?
I think it will in time. I think it removes one of the greatest challenges we faced as a government and as a province, as well as Lethbridge as a city, is that uncertainty. Without that contract, a lot of doctors felt destabilized or unstabilized in their business practice, in their career going forward, and making a long-term commitment to a community to serve in that capacity without that contract was really beyond their ability to commit to. So now that that has been resolved, that the doctors in a large majority have agreed to that, we can take that uncertainty away and we can start rebuilding the relationship with doctors. They know how much we need them. Citizens of Lethbridge and citizens of Alberta know how much we need primary care physicians, and we'll start to build that back. We have more good news, but this is a great step in the right direction.
And where are we at when it comes to new doctors coming to Lethbridge here?
We have 17 new doctors hired, and if you consider that each doctor roughly has a patient list of an average of 1,000 people, that's almost half of the people in Lethbridge who don't have a family doctor can now look forward to hopefully attaining one. And if some of those doctors take on a few more patients, we can maybe hit that halfway mark. We've got 4 that are in the process who should be able to practice in Lethbridge before the end of the year. And the rest of them are slated to begin work between January and the end of March next year.
Premier Jason Kenney has been visiting both Toronto and Vancouver, trying to lure professionals to Alberta, not just doctors, touting the opportunities here along with the affordability aspect. Outside of healthcare professionals, what are some of our biggest needs here in our region?
We have many. We need a lot of skilled labor, both on the trade side and on the professional side of the equation. We are a strongly ag-based society, so we need farm workers, we need truckers, but we also need people who work in factories and manufacturing and supports and service industries. Really, you look around, there's job advertising for almost every job. We need just those skilled workers, those people willing to work and help our economy continue to grow and recover. It's strengthening every day. We've got some great resources, and now we need to continue the growth of great people to fill those positions.
Nathan, let's chit-chat a bit about that recovery for a moment here. A number of small business owners were hit very hard during the pandemic, and now with inflation at around 7%, they're still finding it extremely tough. What government help is available to help many of our entrepreneurs who are finding it really rough out there right now?
Yeah, it is. It's still a challenging time, even though the economy is recovering. Alberta's recovery plan, which we put out at the beginning of the pandemic, really laid out that path for things that businesses could do. We have Alberta Innovates, we have a business link. All of this information can be found at alberta.ca, small business resources, which has resources, programs, grants, and other support for businesses if they need that help just to continue their recovery from the last 2 years.
This is National Truth and Reconciliation Week. Do you feel the province has really done enough to help meet the needs of our Indigenous peoples? And let me take it even a further step. Just outside of our back door is the Blackfoot Confederacy, one of the largest First Nations communities in Canada. So what's that relationship like? And how can we continue to build it moving forward?
Yeah, great questions, Hal. For me, it's not about enough or not enough. It's about a relationship and respect. And that means listening, learning, and working together with our First Nations and Indigenous peoples, and working together until we can maintain a cooperative, mutually beneficial relationship. So that work will never be done. We need to continue to do that. I think we've made some great starts. Our relationship with the Blackfoot Confederacy is in a good place. We need to continue to work with that. I've had a number of meetings myself with some of their council and elders and knowledge keepers. I've gone to a couple of powwows this year to see their culture and heritage coming back as well. The pandemic was very difficult for them as a people, but they are just a truly resourceful people. They're very kind and generous, incredibly funny. And as we continue to get to know them, to build that trust, not just their trust in us, but our trust in them, and develop them, see them thrive and flourish as a people. And I hope that never stops, so we can continue to grow that relationship of mutual respect of all stripes and colors, of all nationalities. And that's what the success of Truth and Reconciliation will be.
Nathan, the opioid crisis continues in many communities across the country, including here in Lethbridge, as is the homeless issue. Now, the city is asking for feedback if the former Civic Curling Center area and the arena should be turned into a sober shelter. Now, the province may help with funding in that regard, depending upon public feedback and input, if we're going to actually make that the sober shelter. What's the latest? What are you hearing?
Well, I do know that, like you said, the city is holding a number of those meetings and information sessions. They are working to find out feedback from the citizens, particularly in those areas, what they think. My office has received a number of information packages from other interested groups in working to that regard. And this is all part of our continuum of care, which we began very quickly after we were elected. There's all these parts and pieces, and a sober shelter is another piece that needs to be thought about and worked on, and how that can best be delivered and where that can best be delivered. So I'm working in partnership with City Council in their endeavors, and look forward to the feedback that we hear from the citizens of Lethbridge.
Nathan, some within your party want to see a provincial police force, while others say it's too costly and we should just keep the RCMP here in Alberta. Where do you stand and why?
Well, I'm a little bit of a both and kind of person. I believe that we need to keep the RCMP. I would like to see them as a national police force. They represent Canada extremely well. There's incredibly competent people all through that organization, even if we might have some challenges with administration or government direction at times. But I think they could do the work very similar to what the US has in the FBI and the CAA. But what I would like to see is Alberta have a community police force where the province has the jurisdictional authority to govern that. Now, there's more work to do. I think we really need to work with our municipal partners, both those in the urban areas and the rural areas. We need to have them at the table. We need to address their concerns about cost, about transition times and timelines, as well as how we're going to structure this authority and how this is going to look. There's a lot of work to go into it. I think it's a conversation that we need to have. But like I said, I believe both and. I think I'd love to see the RCMP kept as a national police force, as well as Alberta having its own provincial police force for that community policing.
Now, your government said as long as West Texas Intermediate oil stays at $79.99 US per barrel, the provincial fuel tax will remain off the table. Unfortunately, oil dipped below that, and now gas prices are going up. It seems like some of the provincial fuel tax is coming back. But there's some of the UCP leadership candidates saying we're going to take that off the table entirely to save Albertans money. Where do you stand on that?
I think that's a great idea, that we need to talk to our base and our taxpayers and realize that though the province benefits when those prices get high, there's also a negative side to that in terms of affordability for the citizens of Alberta. And I think it's a responsible government to have that conversation, get that feedback from them, and say, what's the most responsible path forward? If that is every time the price of oil goes above $90 a barrel, we eliminate it completely, then we need to move forward with that. I think we do need to look potentially at the inflationary pressures on that. It may not be a fixed dollar point. It may be an inflationary adjustable point, because we all know the value of a dollar today is not the same as the value of a dollar from 10 years ago. And that could be the case going into the future as well. I think we need to take very careful consideration of that, but we want to protect the citizens of Alberta from those rising costs and do it in a responsible way. And I think we need to consider the future timelines of that. But right now, I would be in favor of removing it for the time being, for sure.
So Nathan, how else can we make life more affordable for Albertans? I mean, the province has talked about $50 a month for the next 6 months to help with electricity costs. There's the help when it comes to natural gas heating our homes. I believe if it goes above $6.50 per gigajoule, we're going to get help in that regard. But we need more help with this cost of living crisis that we're in right now.
Absolutely. It's something that we continue to work on, and particularly heading into the winter season, where we often see those heating and electricity costs go up. We have done some of those programs to help. We need to potentially look at more as we watch where the market goes on some of those things. But one of our biggest frustrations as a provincial government is every time we take efforts to reduce costs for our taxpayers provincially, it feels like the federal government adds costs back in. We've seen that twice now with the carbon tax. They did it in the summer. They continued with their plan to increase it just when we were trying to decrease it. And I believe they're discussing in Ottawa right now, increasing it yet again. So while we fight as hard as we can to keep those costs down, add some benefit to our citizenry here in Alberta, the federal government appears to continue to add those costs back in. So that's very frustrating. We have a limited amount of authority in terms of those costs to taxpayer to deal with. The whole cost of their bill isn't from the government. It's to cover the utility, it's to cover the industry and the distribution and all of those kind of things. And then there's small fees in terms of governance that the provincial government has jurisdiction over. We can reduce that somewhat, but it's a very small portion. And when you have a federal government seemingly set on increasing those costs, it's very, very, very challenging for provincial government moving forward.
Nathan, how else can we improve our relationship with Ottawa moving forward as a province? Because it's tenuous or strained, to say the least, right now.
I think it's a lot about jurisdictional authority, and I think the current federal government continues to overstretch its mandate in the Constitution. They meddle in the provincial's authority in terms of our energy and resources. They've meddled in terms of our environmental protections. They've meddled in our healthcare in terms of the funding and reducing funding. There's some evidence that they've meddled in our municipal affairs. All of those are provincial jurisdictions. If provincial governments don't stand up for themselves and push back, and which we have done as a province in conjunction with many other provinces in the past, and we need to continue to do so as a united voice, we need to establish those clear jurisdictional guidelines, who's in charge of what. And going back to my earlier point, I'm very strong on this because I believe in limited government. If government does not limit itself, it will continue to grow, which is an added cost to the citizens. Some of those costs are worth bearing, but some of them need to be considered a second time, whether they should be put forward in a cost that is borne by the taxpayer. So these are very important discussions. It's a very important time for us as a province. It's a very important time for us as a country to make sure that we govern the people well, and we make sure that we have to balance that budget. It's not an unending stream of money, and there is only one taxpayer, so we owe it to them to be responsible in our governance and how we do that.
And sometimes politicians have to remember that they work for us. We don't work for them, right?
Exactly.
UCP Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf, thanks so much for your time today.
You bet. Thank you, Hal. Appreciate it.
You know, so many Canadians are concerned about their safety, especially in rural areas. A number of farmers and ranchers on the prairies are concerned about police arriving on time when a trespasser threatens their families or properties. Is there really enough resources to protect those in our rural communities? Joining us today to talk about that and give us some of the insights on the issue of rural crime in Alberta is Cor DeWitt from Alberta Rural Crime Watch, Rural Crime Prevention, joining us from Leduc, Alberta, just outside of Edmonton. Cor, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you.
So, Cor, how did the Alberta Rural Crime Watch and Rural Crime Prevention Initiative come to be?
Well, it started way back in 1978 is when a few people got together and started to get concerned about crime rates in their area. And they started out as a range patrol, actually, but later on in the years to come, they decided that they were not fulfilling their total mandate. So in 1995, they changed it to Alberta Rural Crime Watch, which is more of an inclusive name that covers everyone.
Now, the program was initially called the Alberta Range Patrol. What happened with this type of patrol?
Well, range patrol was primarily looking after cattle and that sort of thing, and trying to find people that were rustling cattle, and the old Western idea. And it wasn't really concerned about break-and-enters and car thefts and all that sort of thing that we have today.
So this sounds like it was kind of a partnership between the police and the citizens of rural Alberta. What are some of the biggest needs of residents in rural communities, especially when it comes to public safety? What are you hearing, Cor?
Well, the biggest thing that they're looking at right now is a timeline between Rcmp getting out to the rural area where the incident has taken place, and the rates. The rate of crime increases in some communities. And it's kind of funny when you look at it this way. You see an increase in break-and-enters from 5 to 10 a month, and suddenly there's a 50% increase. And it's not really a 50% increase. It's just a little bit of a rush on break-and-enters. And the next month it'll go down, and they say, okay, it's a decrease. We've done our job. Well, we haven't really done our job. It's just gone down naturally. So the statistics are kind of funny to analyze.
Do you feel perhaps that there may be a smaller police presence in rural Alberta and across the prairies?
I don't know if there's a smaller presence at all. I think it's just a matter of where they are needed at the time. If there's a rush in a certain area of Alberta, a certain district or county, then there may be some resources spread out into that area to help combat the problem. And then another area feels that they're being shortened out because maybe the criminal has moved into another area. There's not as many police officers running around, and that'll sort of skews the results of the statistics, right? It's all stats nowadays. That's what they follow in order to find out whether they're doing a good job or bad job, or where resources need to be placed. I mean, I'm not a police officer. I don't get involved in the placement of police officers, but I can see it where they have an area that is very rural, very sparsely populated. They cannot have 20 officers driving around the county all the time checking on everything. But when something happens in one end, 2 or 3 officers head out there, or the other end of the county is not being taken care of.
It must be a real challenge for a lot of RCMP as well that head out to rural communities. Range Road 22, by the hay bale, by this rock, or by Range Road 485. Like, you really have to know your region, don't you, to be able to arrive in time to be able to help families who may be threatened.
Exactly, and it's there's some very rural areas in Alberta, very sparsely populated, where you don't see a farmhouse for 5 or 10 kilometers. I was going to say miles, but we're in kilometers now. It's 5 or 10 miles is a long space between residents, and you don't have the neighborhood taking care of each other in that sort of sense, because they're not right across the road from each other. They're not able to keep an eye on their place, on their neighbor's place, like we have around Leduc where I live, where it's very densely populated. There's houses on every quarter section of land here, so people can watch out for each other pretty quickly. Whereas in a very sparsely populated area where there's like 5-10 kilometers between houses, you can't really keep an eye on your neighbor.
Let's talk about some of the feedback you've received from rural residents and some of their biggest concerns when it comes to crime on their farms and ranches.
Well, the biggest concern I think right now that we're starting to see is the court system issues of releasing the criminal or the suspect. When they're arrested by RCMP, brought before the court releases them on bail and so on. They go back out in the street again. Catch and release is a phrase that's used a lot out here.
Would you say the scope of crimes have really changed here in Alberta?
I don't think they've changed. I think they've gotten a little bit more sophisticated because they're starting to take catalytic converters, stuff like that, off of vehicles that they can turn into money for their drug issues that they have or whatever. I mean, years ago, there was no catalytic converters on vehicles, so they didn't take that. Now there is, so they start to steal that kind of thing. Equipment is getting more and more expensive. So there's more and more items on there that they can take out of the equipment and trucks and combines and so on. So there's the targets are similar in scope, but they're just trying to get stuff that's more valuable.
When you're talking to a lot of farmers and ranchers core who may be gun owners, law-abiding gun owners, and they say, we want to protect our properties, we want to protect our families, and we don't appreciate the government trying to take our guns away. When you have those conversations with a lot of people in rural communities, what are your thoughts?
I have not had a conversation about gun control or gun access with farmers in our area at all. They have no concerns at all. They know that you can't be vigilante. And if everyone is carrying a gun, they're going to be in trouble. That's my personal view. We're going to have issues with people pulling guns on innocent neighbors coming by to check because they've hit the ditch, they need a pull or they need some help, and you're going to have problems with that. And I feel strongly we don't need guns.
So tell us a little bit more about the mandate of your organization and how it may have changed over the years.
Well, the mandate of our organization is to bring the grassroots chapters together as a provincial voice with the provincial government to canvas for crime prevention programs and such things that can help reduce crime. We've really wholly adopted the CPTED program, the Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design, which sounds like a very ominous title, but it just means give you access to your neighbors, to see your house, to see your farm buildings. Don't cover it all up in trees and everything and make it nice and hidden and nice and private, because then the criminal can go in there and do his thing and the neighbor will never even know that he's threatening your vehicle, taking your tools out of your shop or anything else that he's interested in. And that's what we try to do, give access to the neighbors to see what's happening at your house or at your farm. And this also comes in play in businesses as well, when they have a storefront that is covered with advertising. And that's great for advertising for the business, but it doesn't tell the neighbors that there's a robbery going on because they can't see it. Whereas if they had open windows, clear windows, you could see that there's a robbery taking place at a convenience store. It can be reported right away, rather than find out later on that the doors were locked and nobody could get in and nobody could see inside. They didn't know what was going on.
So, Cord, do you think your group's voice is really being heard by different levels of government?
I believe we are. We have a very active website. Well, I can give it right now. It's www.ruralcrimewatch.ab.ca, which is a massive website that has grown in the last 3 or 4 years by an excellent webmaster that we have. Has volunteered his time, and the website is garnered comments from right across Canada as far as the information that's on there. I think we have about 12 or 13 videos on there on CEPTED principles, on storing firearms, to protecting your property, to and enclosing your yard, make sure it's safe, gates, use of gates, pros and cons. I mean, CEPTED is not a perfect program, but it's a lot better than nothing at all.
There's been a lot of talk from the UCP about bringing in a provincial police force. What are your thoughts in that regard? Would it be better than the Rcmp?
Well, we worked with the Rcmp for 25 years. We've had very few issues with them. We have a good program, a memorandum of understanding between the Rcmp and ourselves, and it's worked very well. But we also deal with, like my group, my personal group that I deal with the Edmonton City police officers. Calgary City police officers are dealing with different groups. Lethbridge, all over the place. So we will work with whatever police force we're given. So I'm saying that it doesn't really make that it doesn't make that much difference to us which group we're going to have to deal with. We have to deal with somebody. So whatever police authorities out there, we will work with.
Cord, let's chat a little bit more about the passive and active patrols that assist RCMP in rural areas. Can you talk about that?
Well, Rural Crime Watch does passive patrols. Passive patrols, because we travel to our locations, like our farmyards and our different pastures and fields where we're having our crops. We will take a different route to the different fields. So as you go one way, you make a left turn out of your driveway, and next time you make a right turn, and you kind of look out for suspicious vehicles, suspicious persons. Most people know their neighbors' vehicles, so you can pretty well tell if a vehicle is kind of from the neighborhood or if it's kind of different. If it's different, you kind of take the license number down, or with cameras now on these cell phones, snap a picture. You got it. I mean, my trucks, I have dash cams, so I keep an eye on what the dash cam's picking up. And then I will report it to the Rcmp and say, okay, this vehicle I've spotted twice in 2 different locations sitting in a driveway. What's it doing there? So they'll do a cursory check and say, okay, we've had this black Ford half-ton. It's suspiciously reported by 3 people, and we've had 2 unsolved break-and enters. Maybe there's a connection, and that's when it comes back to a resolve.
So, Cord, you chit-chatted a bit about the relationship you have with the Rcmp. Can you tell us about other groups your organization continues to work with?
Well, we continue to work with Citizens on Patrol, where they do an active patrol, where they actually have assigned patrols where they go out to the left side of the town, or the right side, or the middle of town, but they have issues with getting volunteers to do small towns and small areas, because it's a fairly large commitment on time. And that's one thing that's very difficult with any group that's organizing now to crime prevention or crime reduction, is getting the volunteers to step forward and commit one weekend a month to patrolling. That takes quite a bit to get them to do that.
You know, technology's changed a lot over the years, Cord, when it comes to helping nonprofits, different industries, and as well fighting crime, and especially in rural areas. Let's talk a bit about the crime app that your organization uses. People can tap in on their phones.
Yes, we developed a phone app a couple of years ago, and I've improved it slightly in the last couple of years. And what it does is if you touch your app on your Apple phone or your Android phone, it will bring up your geographical area, your GPS area. It'll give you the closest Rcmp detachment, the phone number for that detachment. So you can touch the phone number, it'll dial the phone for you, and you can talk to the detachment and report a crime that's taken place in your viewing area. And it really comes in handy when there's an accident on a country road somewhere and you're driving in an area that you're not sure whose detachment has taken jurisdiction. And you can say, okay, there's an accident. You can report it right away. I mean, you can call 911 as well, but it'll also give you some information as to what to do. There's some tips on there on prevention and statistics and so on. It's all in that app, and it's free for anyone who wishes to download it. It's at the Apple Store and at the Android Store as well, and on the website.
So if viewers are interested in contacting you and getting involved with your organization, especially if they want to volunteer, how should they go about doing that? They
go through our website at www.ruralcrimewatch.ab.ca. There's some information there on the navigation tab. You don't have to be a member to get that information, and you can go into it and look at how to set up your own Rural Crime Watch area, because there are some areas of Alberta that are not covered by a Rural Crime Watch group. So you can go in there and it'll give you some ideas on how to start one and where to go and what registration is take place. You have to have a society's registration from Alberta Registries as well. That's a requirement. And so you can't just say, I want to be a member and go ahead and jump in there. You have to follow some steps and get your community involved. That's number one.
And perhaps a criminal check when you're vetting different candidates?
Yes, some groups have criminal record checks for every member that they allow into their group. I know the provincial board, everyone is criminal record checked every 3 years, and every member of their local board of directors is also criminal checked every 3 years as a part of our memorandum of understanding with the RCMP.
Cord DeWitt is with Alberta Rural Crime Watch, Rural Crime Prevention. Thanks so much for joining us today from Leduc, Alberta.
You're welcome, Hal. Thank you very much.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.